This week's episode of the Sports Initiative podcast is brought to you by Scoop. Here's Pippa to tell you more.
Hi, my name's Pippa. I'm co-founder of a new sports nutrition startup, and I'm here to tell you about my company, Scoop. Scoop is a new sports nutrition brand in compostable pods. Over the last 18 months, we've developed the first pod-based nutrition shaker that allows you to make an easy, mess-free fitness shake in 3 simple steps. Pop it, shake it, drink it. Scoop's unique system offers many benefits. You can change flavours and supplement whenever you want. It's fast, easy and mess-free to prepare. Our pods are easily transportable so you can take them on the go. And it's 100% compostable. Our first blend, the Workout Whey, is a whey isolate protein drink made from only natural ingredients and is available in 3 delicious flavours. Want to try Scoop? You're in luck. On the 22nd of June at 1 p.m, we're launching Scoop via Kickstarter. By supporting Scoop on Kickstarter, you can save up to 45% on your order and will help us make Scoop a reality. Follow us on Instagram at scoop_en, and for more information, check out www.scoopnutrition.es. Thanks.
As today's its release date, make sure you go and secure your product now. This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with Head of Coaching at Cardiff City, David Hughes. He discusses the culture created at FWA and how this has transcended across all the age groups, what he's noticed about the cultures at the variety of different professional clubs he's worked at, such as Aston Villa, Watford and Southampton, as well as the balancing act of individual player development combined with team performance. Oh, and as you hear, do us a favour and make sure you share us with friends and family as we're continuously looking to grow the audience. I hope you enjoy. Perfect. So, Dave, first of all, thanks very much for giving up some of your Friday morning. How are you? Are you all safe and well? And did you enjoy the Wales game a couple of nights ago?
Yeah, very good. We're all good. It's been it's a fantastic achievement, isn't it, for Wales to qualify a second tournament in succession, and then it's probably the response and the media coverage of what effectively was an away game with the amount of Turkish supporters, and then the level of performance. As a football fan, first and foremost, they're inspiring the nation, the children to want to play football. Fantastic role models. There's clearly an outstanding team spirit, and long may it continue. Let's hope it's the same in Rome on the weekend, which is effectively another away game. So the tournament has a different feel to it, but they're inspiring huge amounts of children to want to play football. So that's only a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how UEFA have done it in terms of making sure certain teams have got loads of home games. I know England have been fortunate at that, but it does seem a little bit unfair. Like with everyone, obviously for Wales, they're basically just away 3 games in a row.
Yeah, they did apply, I believe, to host a couple of games in the Millennium Stadium, but they went to Scotland instead. So I think Hampden Park had a couple of games. England have clearly got all games at home, so it's a home tournament for them, isn't it? To a point.
Yeah.
But again, equally it's outstanding for it to have a home feel, for English supporters, English players, similar to probably what Euro '96 was when I was younger.
Yeah, no, I think it is good. And as you said, kind of the one thing I've said on this podcast before with the Welsh side is I love like the unity both across all sports. Like you look at the rugby, you look at the football and stuff, you really have that kind of national identity. And obviously over this tournament and the last one, you can see how proud the team is making a nation. And then hopefully, I guess on your end, you see more and more players coming into the academy and realise that they can go and compete in international tournaments.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I I worked at the FAW for just over 2 years in the last European tournament, or at that time frame, and so managed to have probably some access which I never thought I'd ever dream of having as a supporter, let alone to be covering the tournaments with some scouting for opposition or potential opponents. So got a real behind the scenes appreciation of the attention to detail and the team spirit of the players and the staff and the togetherness and the unity and probably more importantly the culture. So how they've brought the supporters into that culture with the Red Wall, the Together Stronger mantra is embraced, and you can feel it and you can live it, and they live it, and you can see it, and it's evident. There's clearly friendship amongst team players and teammates. Is that always the same in every team? I don't know. So that culture is not words on a wall or a sticker or a document. It's something which is lived and breathed, and that's evident in the nation. That's evident with a nation of 3 million people being able to compete at that level. Is a fantastic achievement, and there's a huge amount of people who deserve a significant amount of credit. Gary Speed started it off, Ossian Roberts as technical director with the development pathways, Chris Coleman taking it on in difficult circumstances, having alignment in their player development pathways all the way through to their intermediate teams, and you see the benefits of that now with players stepping in who have that greater and deeper understanding of what playing for Wales actually means. It's more than pulling a shirt on. It's more than turning up on an international camp. Those values are hugely embedded, and let's be honest, they're writing, qualifying again for another major tournament. They're writing history, aren't they? And what a fantastic achievement that is for young players who you look at the makeup of the squad. There's a good blend of experience and youth. So 4, 6, 8 years down the line, there's the experience of what it feels like. And let's hope this is a journey which is going to continue for as a football supporter, as a Wales supporter, and equally someone who loves football.
Yeah, I think what's been really interesting from the outside, I mean, you've got obviously your likes of Gareth Bale, Aaron Ramsey, who, are world-class players playing at, Juventus, Real Madrid, etc. But I think one of the things that's interesting for me, and I guess is credit to the pathway, is the way those younger players come in. So you look at someone like Kiefer Moore, who's come through maybe not such a traditional pathway, but comes in and does well. Roden obviously coming in and coming through Swansea, etc. And you've got players that are younger, but you can see almost inherently come in and buy into what is, I guess, being sold or what is being created. From your experience there, how do you think they live the mantras? How do you think that the culture was created so it wasn't just a case of having words on a wall? Was there anything that was kind of done specifically?
I think the players, I sense the players took a part in understanding what the mantra was around and where it stemmed from. If you look at let's look at the where they start the regional squads at 13, 14, 15. Then they get into the 15, 16s where they start playing competitive fixtures. There were examples where Cledwyn Ashford, who's an absolute gentleman, who was around from an educational perspective with the boys on camp and worked as one of the scouts at Wrexham and for the FAW, would teach the boys the national anthem, and they'd have to stand up in the hotel and sing it, and that became almost a ritual. So that is a start as one starting point, is an understanding of what playing for Wales is about. And then it would be fair to say that Osian, there's a number of staff around in the background, Gus Williams, Osian Roberts, who will be known to everybody. The level of attention to detail of teaching, it was everything centered around teaching and educating. The environment that they set was first class. Geraint Williams, who was my boss at the time with the intermediate teams, the same. It was come in and the boys would come in, and it was creating a culture where the players wanted to be there. We were quite same as every national team. We're taking players from Liverpool, whoever else it might be. It has to be a level of trust that we're going to look after them, we're going to teach them, we're going to support them, which is, again, in my eyes, what development's about. And then when you look at the national team, Chris Coleman would be going around Wales, having question and answers, having engagement with supporters at different Welsh festivals, Eisteddfods, and would have a presence which was embedded in the Welsh culture. And so there will be far more examples than those. So those players who come through that pathway, they have a link, they have a bond. Within the same age group now, I think Tyler Roberts, Ethan Ampadu, Joe Morrell, there's more. There's Mark Harrisley and Liam Cullen. They would have been around about the same age, coming through the regional squads. Ben Woodburn would have been another one. Matthew Smith, who's away at the Euros as well. They would have come through similar age groups with a similar feel and a similar theme. And the key part about this all is, I suppose, it wasn't really about. It was about nothing more than treating people properly, teaching them, coaching them, and trying to make them a part of something that felt special. And I think I've alluded to it, encouraging the boys to want to come back. We were having lads turn up on a Sunday when we'd meet up with injuries, and we're going, like, you're going to need to go back, and you probably shouldn't have travelled. And it's like, yeah, but I just want to be here. I want to come because I enjoy it. And so we Geraint and I used to like that. We joke about it. We can't believe he's travelled 3 hours to come down to the hotel. Now we've got to send him back. And we go, well, that's great that he wants to be here, and great that you want to come, but it's probably not right for you. So yeah, and I suppose on reflection, it was a really enjoyable period of time with from my perspective, working for and with Geraint Williams, who's just a wonderful guy. Really, really good coach. Got a fantastic manner when dealing with players, and he had a huge impact on the young players coming through the pathway in the intermediate squads on the back of having a successful career as a manager himself. And when you look at the type of people, it's the people, really, isn't it? We've got they've got a culture, but it's the people within that who played a real part in bringing that to life.
And so how was that laid out to the staff? Because I'd imagine, on that pathway, everyone's going to have different roles. What Chris Coleman's going to be doing at his end is going to be very different to what you're doing with the intermediary teams, etc. So how was that vision portrayed to the staff, and how did people get an understanding of, I guess, where their piece fit in a larger jigsaw moving forward?
I'd probably say it's a good question. There's probably real clarity. We'd have 17 games, and Chris Coleman would be in the dressing room, and giving messages that it's a bigger picture. In I suppose there was a style of play that was put together for a purpose. That style of play linked to the coach education pathway. So you start that Carl Darlington at the FAW and Osian Roberts in particular was the style of play linked directly to what messages were being delivered in coach education. So you're clearly educating coaches on a Welsh way of playing, on a Welsh way of coaching. So yeah, again, it's far more complex and detailed than simply would say a mantra or words on a wall. And the key bit really is that it was 100% believed, and everybody bought into it and delivered the same messages. And so having that identity around wherever you were staying and wherever you were traveling was hugely important. And it I suppose for the Welsh team, it becomes part of what they are, what they represent.
Again, this could be quite challenging, but how do you deal with individuals, either coaches, etc., or players that maybe don't buy into that vision? Because you talk about like the legacy book, and I think the All Blacks know it as no dickheads in the changing room. So how do you go about challenging behaviours that aren't part of the identity that you want?
Well, I suppose all of the staff have to be invested in it and have to have a buy-in, because the minute that individual see there's a gap in the fence, your culture's gone. Because once one gets through that gap in the fence, everybody else is going to follow suit. So that's a collective buy-in in my eyes. And if you believe in it, then you give no opportunity for that situation to arise, because the staff are all aligned in their thinking and in their behaviors. And so I suppose if we said, well, let's look at Southampton with their values. If those values are really, really essential, the coaching staff will not allow a player to get away with having no discipline, let's say. Well, if they go to the medical team, and there needs to be an understanding of what discipline might look like in a medical room, in a rehab session, in an S&C program, in the canteen, when dealing with every member of staff, everybody needs to have the same consideration for, no, we don't do that here. That's not what we do. And then the communication back is still, this individual might be providing a challenge, but we need to make sure we're all together in ensuring there's no gap in the fence room. And that's when you know, in my eyes, that's when you know if the culture is working, because everybody has the same views and the same appetite to understand that, right, this is our job as coaches is to, or as a wider disciplinary teams, is to defend it. Because quite clearly it's similar, no different to a school, is it? You let one child get away with something or step through it, then that's really difficult to ensure that other people don't follow. So there's treating people on individual merits, but there has to be some non-negotiables.
And do you think that's where stripping it back and those key messages or values that you're going to hold being really simple are important? Because whilst there might be detail behind it, I think if you have it really, I guess, intricate and whatnot at the top, can potentially be hard for each department to decipher exactly how that looks within their context. Yeah,
simplicity is always key, isn't it? I'm not sure it doesn't need to be complex and complicated. It can be really straightforward. The key part in all of this is how do you get the players to? It's an interaction and a negotiation. It's not a dictatorship. So it's not, this is what discipline is and this is what we do here. This is trust and this is how you're gonna do it. The most important factor in all of that is that in my eyes, and I'm clearly no expert on this, that there's a discussion and an engagement with the players, with the staff, to build an environment which everybody believes will help drive success. Success may look differently. So if I think back to different places I worked, success in different organizations would be considered. So when the time at the FAW would be, success for us was trying to get to the elite stages every year with every age group. We wanted to progress to a European Championship for an under-17s and under-19s for sure, under-21s absolutely. But we would say if we were getting to the elite stages, that would be considered as a success. And if we could get there consistently, then at one of those points we'll drop on a group where we might be able to qualify for. We came very close one year in the 17s. We needed to win the last game, I think, against Sweden and we ended up losing the game 1-0. So success there looks different. It was about winning, but that was never ever mentioned to the boys. Winning has a part to play in development, but in our eyes, certainly in my opinion, it does not drive development. Winning happens as a consequence of development, is how I view it. And then there's a number of factors that underpin that. But in my eyes, it cannot be in front of development. So the image and all of that, I don't buy it. The image is in the first team. That's the image. Get somebody in the first team at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon. If the team finished top of the league, bottom of the league, there's some context behind it. Is it a young team? Is it an old team? If it's a young team, they're going to find it tough in the short term, but they'll be better in the long term. So all of those factors are how you gauge success. And the understanding is your culture is around ensuring. I kind of view it in my eyes as, on a good day, what is it we're good at? And on a tough day, what is it we're still good at? What is it that underpins a difficult performance or a difficult session? Or so as an individual, if I'm outstanding today as in a coaching session with our under 17s, what is it I was outstanding at? And it might have been the technical and tactical side of the game, or my psychological component. In I was really confident and positive. Well, sitting underneath that is a set of values which clearly underpin all of our performance characteristics. Because on a difficult day, I still, where my touch might be a little bit difficult, or the surface might be challenging, or I'm just not having a good game. That's going to happen, isn't it? To say there's still 5 or 6 factors which are always there, so I can always fall back on. And as a coach, you'd probably sit and go, "We weren't great today, but I tell you what, what we can hang our hat on is our behaviours that underpin it. We're outstanding." So bringing those values to life for players are practical situations, which they're almost tangible. They can see it, they can feel it. And again, I'm the first to say I'm no expert on this at all. I just find it a really fascinating area. You look at Leeds at the moment. What is it they're outstanding at? Well, you'd probably say it's unique, their style of play. The way they work is unique, but it would seem to me he's got a really, really tight environment and culture where the expectations for the players are set, and the players have bought in. And the skill of, I suppose, of a coach is to ensure the players are buying in to their environment to deliver success.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that example is when they were in the Championship, they sold a few players quite early on in that journey. And I think one of the lads, I can't remember his name, but he went out to Sampdoria and he was one of their better players. And I did see a few bits of people questioning it, going, why are we getting rid of him? But it almost seems like, as you said, the culture there is really good. And I saw an interview with Calvin Phillips yesterday, obviously we did really well last week. And the big takeaway I had from it was what a good person he seemed like. And I wonder whether, and I could be wrong, but those people that he got rid of maybe didn't necessarily fit in exactly with how he wanted to work. And that doesn't mean that they're not good players or not good people, but he probably has a very specific style and methodology of work, and he knows how he wants people to fit into that. And if they don't, then he's fine to say, you know what, you can go somewhere else. That's fine.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's fascinating. You look at, I suppose, look at Man City, look at any of those type of teams. Look at Man United under Ferguson. I would presume, I don't know, but most successful teams have an outstanding environment for the players to thrive and perform in. That would be my view. Then I guess sometimes that might be an organisational situation as well, where the whole organisation has that culture. It's not just a group of players in a small area of the programme. So it's fascinating. It's a really interesting subject, and I certainly don't know enough about it. I need to know a little bit more. But I would certainly say whatever the culture is, and every organisation has a culture, they might not always be effective, positive, and influential in the way that you want, but clearly everyone does have one.
Yeah, so looking, I guess, moving to something more, your repertoire and stuff, we actually skip past kind of what your role is now. So do you just want to tell people that have maybe not come across you what you currently do, and I guess what that kind of entails from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis?
Yeah, I'm head of coaching at Cardiff City at the moment. So that centres around our coaching program, our coaching curriculum, our principles of play in the academy, our coaching philosophy, our playing philosophy, looking at how our principles of play drive other areas of our program. So I feel really fortunate and to be here. It's kind of I've lived in Cardiff now for probably 23 years. So I have a huge affinity for the club, and the talent we believe we have. We're trying to develop, much like every other academy does. And so there's a lot of responsibility. I feel that come with a role to continue to drive. I suppose. So who was I talking to? I had a meeting with on a coaching cell with the Premier League on Wednesday, and we ended up. I don't know how we came to the point, but it was standing in my eyes. We're always going to consistently evolve. So you take the program. Hopefully, the program's at a stage, and you're going, right, how can we improve? How can we get better? And then you try and take it to another stage, and the same question: how do we improve? How do we get better? For our players. That's all it centers around for our players and our staff. Staff to love coming into work. Players who thrive in coaching sessions and coaching practices that align and link through the pathway. That thread from top to bottom and bottom to top is essential. So I feel huge responsibility for the players and staff in our program.
So when we're talking about, we say quite a lot, the Cardiff way or the principles that you guys go by, what does that look like in your pathway? What key factors would we see from a Cardiff City team?
I suppose we're no different. Everybody there's so many consistencies in development. There's a patience. There's a purpose, and with a patience, I mean, my view. Other people at the club may disagree with me. Winning, in my eyes, is irrelevant. In our program, it doesn't concern me at all. Teaching, seeing kids arrive, whether they're 9 or 18, loving coming in, desperate to train and get better, with an enthusiasm that's coming from our coaches. And let's say we've got a boy who comes in at 6 or 7, and he comes through to 16, and he still loves the game and loves football, having been in our program, then I'd probably say we're winning. Because along that pathway he's got better. As a consequence of getting better, he stays in our program, and we've got a well-rounded individual and person who's in the program, based around our teaching and our, go back to the points around values and beliefs. We've got a really good rounded individual. So that's winning in my eyes. Teaching is massively, massively important. And making sure that there's almost a periodized approach to our teaching, how and when we intervene, what coaching styles and interventions we might adopt at certain times at different phases. And then equally in the pro phase, the two lead coaches in the 18s and 23s will massively disagree with me, I know, on this, but we'll lose games, and I'm like, I'll be honest, you got 16s playing in your 18s, you got a couple of 15s playing in it. It's going to be tough. That's all right, because that's a massive challenge and a test for them. If we're too concerned with the outcome of a game, we don't promote best talent, because we're maybe concerned about our image and our identity. So our best talent sits in the best age group, whereas from 9 to 16, you'll have blocks of work where you promote talent to the age group above. No issue at all, because the results aren't published. So if you get beat, that's fine. It was a really good challenge and a good stretch for our 13 playing in the 14s. He physically finds it tough, but we plan to give him that. Then you go into the pro phase, you go, no, because there's 2 league tables. And so we don't promote our 16s because we're worried about the league table. And I'm not, our coaches, by the way, are not concerned about it. But you know when you get to that stage that they like winning and they like to see the league table. And for sure, I would say, look, if we're at the top of the league in the 18s, because we've got 6 of our 16s in the squad and a couple of 15s along with our scholars, and in our 23s, we've got 3 or 4 of our 18s playing up consistently, I go, great. Brilliant, because that's a test and that's a challenge. If that's because we've got no 16s playing up and we've got no 18s playing up at the top of the leagues, I'm going, I'm not sure. Are we developing here, or are we managing a group of players to win? And they're in my eyes, they're 2 completely different, contrasting perspectives. So that's what I hope will be is one of the factors. Will be. We try to be different. And then the last one I would say is local talent, Welsh talent from South Wales, not looking to recruit players nationwide, but looking at, there will be times for sure that we might need some additional, some players may crop up and we'll bring them into our 23s. That's going to happen for sure. But local talent, Cardiff City is historically a real it's a hard-working town with the docks and the coal mines up the valleys in our local community. Hard work is embraced from our supporters, and those are the traits and characteristics we want to see in our players. And so if we can teach all of those factors in practice around the building, and we can instill that mentality into our players, working with them, teaching them, then I don't think we'll go too far wrong. And I say it all the time. We lose a game, I'm like, that's all right. Don't worry. It's not a problem. The key win is getting those boys into the first team. That's all that matters.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions off the back of that, but I'll start on this one. So obviously you've been at a few different clubs, different areas. You've been in Villa, Southampton, Watford, etc. Do you see cultural differences from club to club or region to region? So obviously you mentioned there in terms of the grounding of Cardiff City and what the people of the city inherently are like and what they want to see on a match day from their team. Do you see that from the younger generations when you go from club to club?
It's a tough question, isn't it? I'm not sure the younger children would maybe understand as much of historical the almost the landscape of the locality. The best culture I'd probably seen was at Watford at the time. I felt really lucky to work with some hugely talented guys who've gone on and had who are now working at real advanced levels. And do you know what? It wasn't about the slogan on the wall. It was about the people pulling together an understanding of what it looked like. That was probably the best by a long, long way. And I go back to my point. Every club has a culture. Yeah, every club has a culture. Some of them are not as strong. Some of them are different. There might be really strong cultures, but there may be some. I suppose you don't always see it when you're in it. You know. Yeah. Is kind of how I would view it at times. So no, the answer to your question, I would say that was probably the tightest culture. And going through where I've worked, you kind of see things it doesn't make me right, but you see things that you really like, and you go, I really like that. I'd like to use that. I'm kind of not sure about that. And so picking those learnings up are really, really important. So everything can't stem around winning. Everything can't stem around losing. It's the how and the why is how I view development. So, and I say that at the top end of the program. how are we doing it, and why are we doing it, and then what does success look like? They would be the three questions for me. And if we're supporting our players the right way, and teaching is massively valued, then I'd probably say we wouldn't be too far away.
What surprises me about that is you look at Watford and the diversity of people within that region. You could say you'd expect the identity not to be as clear, whereas somewhere like Cardiff, for example, you know, it was South Wales. You've got that type of
that would have changed very, very quickly though, in a period of time. So I suppose the culture historically at that time, you had Graham Taylor as chairman at the time. You had Sean Dyche as manager. Nick Cox was academy manager. With a number of outstanding staff around. Ross Wilson was head of football operations. You had an outstanding group of talented staff, and so I sense that back in the time when Watford went through the leagues with Elton John and Graham Taylor, it was a community club. You know, it was the focal point of the community. It was a community club when I was fortunate enough to secure a poster. It was still a community club. That the academy had an integral role in the overall plan of the business, and developing talent was essential. So when you look at it in that context, that's for me where the culture and the environment came from. We knew we had a role to play, and every department was hugely integrated within that overall and overarching structure and an organisation. And so the boys coming in from different backgrounds and different areas all understood what it meant to be at Watford's academy. It meant you'd get an opportunity. I think the mantra was one opportunity, no guarantees, which is something I use now. And it was really important for the players at that time to understand it. But central to that opportunity was being a good person, understanding that learning and improving was part of it. Being really good at school and in doing your best was essential. You know, that schools program was supported by the staff and reinforced the players. That education was essential. So kids, the boys at the time would never miss college. Never. If there's a reserve game, they got college, because education is important. We want to develop good young men here. So reserve games were not arranged on days when the boys were in college, because that was deemed as essential. So I just think there's those principles at play, and I mentioned earlier, rules of engagement. So yeah, and then ultimately, I suppose it was the people that brought it to life.
That's really interesting. I like the thing about places emphasis are just simple, not organising games on those days, and it would transcend. So obviously you've mentioned around the winning and losing aspect, and that there'll be other people that would suggest towards that top end of your 18s and 23s that actually, because they're getting to the first team level, we'd hope they need to learn how to win, and they need to be in a position where actually they understand how to win games, because essentially if they go and play in the first team, that is what's important on a Tuesday or Saturday. What would your perspective or viewpoint around that be?
Yeah, I get it. It's the how, isn't it? So it's not win at all costs. It's not box it off and squeeze up and kick it long or turn them round. It's about, and this is purely my opinion, it's about doing it with a style. It's about doing it. It's about winning with teaching at the forefront. So I've had this conversation a number of times with a number of different people. So if we're teaching players to win, it's about, let's say, teaching the right back to ensure he understands how to defend the far post when the ball's been stood up. It's about teaching him how to handle contact and defend a switch of play. It's about teaching him how to dominate his wide player in 1v1 situations. So if you teach him all of those facets of the game, in the last 10 minutes when you might be 1-0 up, you're going to win the game because he's got a good understanding of how to defend the far post, how to defend crosses, how to defend 1v1. If winning is essential and the main focus of the whole aspect, are the boys brave enough to deal with the ball under pressure? Because that's psychological. That's not tactical. That's psychological. Can they deal with the ball under pressure? Yes, game management is important at that stage. So let's say 5 minutes before the end of the first half or the end of the game, you've got to teach them how to manage that moment of the game. That said, they're all teaching points. So from minute 1 to minute 90, if it's only about winning, it's about winning, making good decisions, being brave enough to play, being brave enough to deal with the football. And then I would say, what are we what are we teaching players for? Are we teaching them to play in our first team or to go above our first team? Because a real high level attention to detail, I would suggest in any first team or any academy, we want to play. We're developing them for our first team for sure. We're also developing them to try and go and play in the Champions League, to try and develop them to go and play in the international game. And so we can't be one-dimensional in what we teach them. We've got to teach them the game. We've got to teach them aspects of the game which are essential for success. And so there would be an understanding of those characteristics of what it might take. So centre-backs, what do they need to do? Well, I would suggest to be at the top level of the game now, they've got to deal with football. Well, if we're so focused on winning and we stop rolling the ball to him, he ain't going to get better. He's not going to improve. He might get better at kicking it long or sticking it in behind, but at the top level, when that ball gets dropped in behind, is he good enough to take a quick touch and start play again, or is he not? And he's got to try and he's going to knock that ball out. Because at the top level, I would say they have to deal with the ball, and that's where I come from. So, well, they have to be able to deal with the football. And so, if we're winning games by not rolling the ball or not throwing the ball and not trying to construct and develop, how are you developing your midfield players? Because to be a top midfield player in the modern game, you've got to deal with the football. You've still got to deal with second balls, and you've still got to manage with being out of possession, and you've still got to deal with certain areas. And I would also say, how do you make a decision on a young player if you don't have the ball for long spells? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've not got enough experience in this, but I certainly feel, though, I watch age groups play, and if you deal with the ball, you've got a better idea who your better players are. That's kind of how I view it, And again, I'm not saying I'm right here, but style is the how. That's the most important bit for me. It's the style of how we want to try and win. Everybody has a style. Which is the best style to develop players? Is it biggest, strongest athletes to win the game, or is it patience, purpose, and teaching? And I would rather say the latter than biggest, strongest wins a race today. But Brendan Rodgers would always say it's a silver medalist that comes through, and I would agree with that.
Okay, so how do you manage individual development alongside team performance? So in some of the examples you've given there, which are really good, you might have a number 4 that struggles. Well, traditionally he's a number 4. He struggles a lot playing in pockets. So you say, okay, for a period of time, we're going to play him in that 8 or 10 role. The team performance and his performance is going to potentially drop.
Yeah.
But obviously the outcomes and learnings and teaching moments he's going to get during that period is going to increase.
Yeah.
How do you manage that across the pathway so that obviously you're still getting a level of performance that's required of an academy footballer, but you're also supporting him with his individual development?
Well, I would always ask the question, how many players are you going to get in the first team? Are you going to get a team or are you going to get individuals?
Fair point. Why do you say that?
Well, the team needs to function for the individual to get better. So if we've got a midfield player, he must have been in. If we've got a real development program, he can't have only played in that position through his pathway. And so that's how I view it. And so how do we integrate that in the week? Well, we don't focus on what the opposition are going to do on a Saturday in the older age groups. We don't worry ourselves with opposition analysis in the 18s and ask the analysts to watch 3 games of whoever we're going to play on Saturday, because that's irrelevant to our players' development. Analyze our players, feedback to our players on themselves, on their own performance, on their individual development plans, and make those individual development plans real and live and bring them to life. So they're not a document that sits on a laptop. They don't sit on a table in the office. They're really important to generate and deem what success looks like. So that's kind of how I view it. It's about individuals, isn't it? If there's different stages of learning, there's differentiation amongst the group. I always feel that we have to have teams to function. But apart from the class of '92, I'm not sure I know too many teams that have gone into a first team with 7-8 players in the same year, and yet we still get bogged down with the team. Coach the individuals to get better, and then the team will improve. That's kind of my stance on it.
So do you cater that in your, I guess, team selection or player recruitment, for example? So let's look at the younger age groups, for example, where you might have physically more mature and less mature players. If you've got a very immature and late maturing group, would you get a couple of play up a couple of physically mature players to allow them more space to play or more time on the football rather than constantly being under pressure because they can't physically compete?
Yeah, maybe. You play them across the age groups, I guess. I mean, let's be honest. What's the standard response from a scout? Got a player coming in. What's he like? He's a big one. Standard. It's the talent that screams, because they can affect the game. It's a standard response, whereas get a team full of late developers and be patient, support them and encourage them. Get a balance. They might need 1 or 2 in there to look after them, but not more than 1 or 2, I would say. And be patient, teach them, coach them. And it goes back to the previous points we've had, Mike, is you got we had a 16 who played in the 23s last year. We had some 15s that played up. They found it really tough. The 15s playing in the 18s against Charlton found it really tough, but they survived. They survived, and we lost the game, but they would have gained a huge amount from that experience, and that then gives them a perspective on what the level above looks like 2 years before. So I would say that's being brave enough to stick to and believe in what you're doing. That's kind of you look back to MK Dons, going back to when Dele Alli was in the team, in their youth team. They would. I'm sure I remember them taking some big losses. They believed in what they were doing, and they got a top player through it, top player. And so if you believe, you got to believe in what you do, and everybody has their own approach, and they'll have data to back it up. The only data I think I need to see is who's getting in the first team at the end of the path, and that's ultimately what development's about. That's quite simply my view on it. Is improve the players, improve them as people, show them, teach them, help them, support them, make sure they love the game, make sure they love football, engage with them on their level, and let them have some experiences that, good or bad, will be part of their teaching, because it isn't always going to go well. Let's say the 15s that played against Charlton could have gone horrifically for them. They could have taken a big defeat, but we're aware of that when you make the decision.
Yeah, so if we're looking at kind of with this individualized support, what are you actually able to offer? So what does their individual development plans actually look like? Are these formalized? Are they informal? And I guess in a holistic environment with a multidisciplinary team, what support are they able to access? So I'll give you examples, probably easy to do that. Say, for example, you've got a right-sided midfield player who's currently struggling with his delivery from wider areas.
Yeah. Well, I would say it depends on what age he's at. So at that level, you'd probably think that would be towards the end of his development path. So his program needs to center around improving his development. If he's been in our system from a younger age, he should be technically where we'd want him to be. He should be athletically where he wants to be. And that might not just be a technical requirement. That might be down to physicality. That might be down to confidence. So we need to pick out the reasons why. We need to be diligent enough to provide support and perhaps more importantly, engage the player in the conversation. So we're not going to tell you what you're going to do. What do you think you need to work on? We have an idea. How do you feel? What do you believe would take your level to the next stage? And then allocate the support around that and make sure that those sessions, in all of those sessions, if it's, let's say, I'll give you an example. I used to work with a centre forward who was a big lad, super kid, needed to improve his heading because that was the type of player he was going to be. My conversation with a sports scientist, a guy called Peter Sharp, who was without shadow of doubt the best I've ever seen, because he understands what development looks like. It's not numbers. He does the numbers and he does the data, but he understands what development looks like. And I said to him in a discussion about the player, so look, we need to improve his heading. So to begin with, it's going to be static. To think about take-off foot, to think about articulating and understanding his body when he's in flight, and then we'll move it to on the move. But everything seems such an effort, and Peter's response was, yeah, that's because his thoracic mobility is not great. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put a development program in place around his thoracic mobility and around his hips as well. And then that will align with what his development plan is going to look like, because I'm going to work with that over a 10-week block. So he shouldn't just see an improvement in his technical requirements. It should be a bit more freedom in his movement. It might be 20 weeks, but that was a joined up approach, because at the time there was the sports scientist had a real clear idea of what development looked like, and how his role had an impact on physical development. So he would actively speak to the analyst on a Saturday on the side of the pitch and go, can you clip that for me, please? So we could then reference, look, this is what I'm saying to you about this is why we're working on these sessions in the week around your movement of your core and your trunk. All right, this is the example in the game. Can you see that? Yeah, oh my God, I didn't even know. Well, therefore we're increasing by, and that for me is a sports scientist who can develop players as well. So it's not a coach-led program. It's a program that's led by all of the staff working within it. So that's how I would look at an individual development plan.
And how do you manage that? I guess because that's, if you've got like 25 players in a group, maybe scrap the goalkeepers, because goalkeeper coaches are going to work with a multidisciplinary team differently. How do you manage that with like the other 23 to ensure that they're all getting the same level of support?
You have to give them the same level of support. You have to. Otherwise, don't take 25. If you're making if my boy goes into school and is given less support than somebody else, as a parent, you're not going to be happy. So that's giving equal opportunity. They might not all get there, but they've got to get equal time. So having creating an environment where the players are driving their own clips, so pulling clips out linked to their IDP, coming in to speak to the coach, on at a set point in the week. Say, look, this is your time slot on a Monday afternoon. So we might not train Monday afternoon, but we're going to have dedicated time for 10 minutes. Bring your clips in every Monday. Send them across. Let's review them. I think is essential. So that you have to find a way, because any coach, I suppose, if we've got a coach in the 14s of whatever age group says he's going to play in our first team, I'm not sure I could tell you who's going to play in our first team from the 18s and 23s. We don't know. They're going to come back in pre-season. They'll have grown. They'll have developed. They'll have changed. Emotionally, they'll have maybe have matured. Or there'll be so many factors at play. So we don't know who's going to get in the first team. We don't know what that's going to look like. So if you don't give it and afford every player the access to that, then we're doing the players a disservice.
So, in terms of what time you're able to give them during the week, you mentioned there kind of that 10 minutes where bringing the clips. Would you chase them up to do those clips, or would it be like, this is your time slot? If you don't use it, that's down to you.
You need to get to that stage, don't you? Because you need a players to have a buy-in to their development. So the access to pulling clips out can be done away from the academy. They get the clips. They can do that at home. They can send them across. You can review them. One aspect of COVID has been this video calls. So there's no issue why learning can't take place when they're at home. With having a video call. So being creative is essential. Then having a real desire to try and make the boys better is crucial. And then I suppose there's points where if you've got a real clear principle of play and how you want to work, you then have unit meetings around what it is we're trying to increase understanding around. So yeah, I just think you have to make time. You have to make time. If the program's about the boys, then make sure it's about the boys.
And looking at your weekly schedule, do you factor on pitch time for them to go and work on those sessions? And are those sessions, the older age groups, say under 18s, under 23s, do you factor in a half an hour period where they can go and design and deliver their own IDP sessions with a coach?
So the guys we're to be fair to Blocks and Rammers, they're really creative in pulling those together. So it's usually a 2 days after a game, they'll come in and it's an IDP session as one of them in the week, which the boys should know about. They pull their clips out and feedback. So it's really important. And it's important then that over the younger age groups that we're teaching techniques and skills that are essential, irrespective of where they might end up playing. So again, I would say we don't know if an under 10 who might be playing as a defender is going to be a defender when he's 14. So we can't be teaching that early specialisation of, right, he needs to work out to pass it into a 4. We just need to teach him how to pass it and receive it and release it, and have skills and techniques that are essential, whether he evolves, when he gets the experience of playing as a front player or a wide player, same techniques are applied.
Yeah, and so I guess this challenge, because it changes from coach to coach, and obviously particularly at top level is ever changing in terms of first team managers. But is that similar program allowed at a first team level? So are they allowed the opportunity to have IDP type stuff, IDP type clips?
Yeah, but again, those will be pulled. They will pull those out and feedback. So they're there and available for access.
So then I guess the next question is, how do you go around managing all of this? it's a lot of the individual development stuff. And you've mentioned a lot about the periodization of your coaching methods and all that type of stuff, with different coaches coming in the building who are going to have different methodologies in the way they coach. If I look at Tottenham, for example, they're looking for every coach under the sun at the moment. And we've gone from Mourinho, who has a very pragmatic, seems like very direct in the way he speaks to his players, to there was Ten Hag, to this Fonseca, who was very different and expansive, to Gattuso, who is a bit of a maniac from what I've seen on the pitch, to God knows who's going to be now. So how do you prepare your players, I guess, on a human level to carry on doing that IDP stuff, but also have a relationship with the manager in whatever way they act or whatever their personality type is?
It's a good point. Does that not come down to the type of people you've got?
How do you mean?
Well, you're trying to create and develop individuals who are invested in their own progress and development. So if they're invested in their own development, it's much like a school, isn't it? So I always try to, rightly or wrongly, think about what would it look like for my lad at school. Well, I would say the teacher's got a class of 23 children. Well, you can't manage those children every practical session. There has to be some investment from the teachers, from the children, to respect the teachers, set the work. You now have to go away and work at that yourself. You have to, and then when you need some support, they would ask for it, right? Is that massively different to what we would expect in an academy? We want players to be they make decisions on the grass on their own. They make decisions in possession, out of possession, from their own understanding and learning. Well, we can't now be driving those programs. So they have to be supported by us, led by the players, with the coaching and wider team facilitating that environment for them to ensure that learning is taking place.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic, that, because obviously, naturally, people get on with certain individuals better than others.
Yeah.
And I could ask for a certain level of facilitation or support, or particular facilitation or support, which my previous first team manager was more than happy to provide, and go, yeah, that's absolutely fine. I can give you the space to do that. We're not going to do any shape work. You can go away and practice your finishing. The new guy that comes in a week later after your first team gaffer's just been sacked is like, no, we're doing 45 minutes worth of shape work. You're going to have to find an alternative time for that. And it would challenge them and the players to adapt to what this new manager wants. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic of how younger players navigate that, moving into that first team environment.
Yeah. So how do we encourage them to be adaptable in the younger age groups? How would we do that? What would your thoughts be on that?
Well, I guess one, exposure to different types of coaching and different types of people. And I guess coming into your role is the periodization of coaching interactions. So maybe over a season, you go for this 6-week block, be more command, this be more Q&A, guided discovery. So there's a structure in place.
Or it's phase specific. So at younger age groups, there would be more command, wouldn't there? Maybe as you move into the youth phase, it'd be more cooperative learning, a huge amount of guided discovery. And then when you get towards the tail end, you'd be trying to challenge their learning. So it's not telling, it's kind of asking. So I think it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
Perfect. Listen, Dave, that we could go on about this all day, but I'm conscious we're fast approaching the time we allotted. So last question for me, which is something I ask everyone, which is, who's the best player or coach you've worked with or against, and why?
Oh, good question. God, I'm not sure about coach I've worked with. Thought Gareth Williams was outstanding. Gareth Taylor was excellent, both in different ways. Carl Darlington was an outstanding coach. it's a tough. I'm not sure I could give an answer on that. Best coach I've worked with. Best player. There's different stages, I suppose, in that last question. If I think back to, I started at Shrewsbury, we had Connor Goldson in the youth team, John Taylor, Tom Bradshaw, Ryan Woods. Connor Goldson had an outstanding mentality, was a fantastic young player with huge potential. Watford, I'm trying to think of the guys there. You had Bernard Mensah, Alex Kubiak, guys who went on and had careers. Wales, I mean, I think of Wales really. Tyler Roberts, Ethan Ampadu, all had something different. Probably the biggest, most significant development I saw was Jacob Ramsey at Aston Villa. Jacob was playing in the 18s as a 16 and found it a challenge and stretch. But his growth and development over 2 years was exceptional. Great kid, lovely young man, one great family, really supportive, and embraced the challenge, because ultimately development's a challenge. I said it to a parent and player 2 days ago. We have to ensure we're equipping kids to climb Mount Everest with the tools to get to the top. You can't do that in flip-flops, and unfortunately there's no elevator on the side that takes you straight to the top. You've got to put the hard yards in, and when you get there, you've got to stay there.
Perfect. Listen, Dave, really appreciate your time, and hopefully catch up with you again soon.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.